This video is for section 9.3, naming and writing formulas for molecular compounds. The learning goal is to be able to determine the formula and the name of a molecular compound. In the previous section, we examined ionic compounds, such as sodium chloride. This compound's name is sufficient to tell us that the formula is NaCl, because we can use the charges of each ion to form a neutral compound. The charge of a sodium ion is +1. The charge of a chloride ion is -1. With one of each, that creates a neutral balanced formula. And so the formula is Na1Cl1. Molecular compounds aren't made of ions and don't have charges. So a naming system has to explicitly indicate the number of atoms of each element in a molecule. This is accomplished using prefixes such as mono, di, tri, etc. In your book, there's a chart of common prefixes, and here's that same chart. Here's how you name a binary molecular compound. That is, a molecular compound made of only two elements. Select prefixes for each element name based on the number of atoms of each element in the molecule. For instance, let's say a molecule has the element hydrogen, and let's say there are 2 atoms of hydrogen. You would choose a prefix that means 2, and that would be di. Or let's say that a molecule has the element oxygen, and there are 3 oxygen atoms in the molecule, so choose a prefix that means 3, which is tri. Note, the prefix mono is never used on the first named element. To any prefix, append the name of the element. That means to attach the name of the element right after the prefix. Use the regular name for the first element in the compound. But change the ending to "ide" for the second element in the compound. When the second element begins with a vowel, sometimes the prefix's vowel is dropped to avoid causing double vowels. So there are a lot of rules here. Let's look at some examples and see how these rules play out to name compounds. CH4 is a molecular compound. It's not created from ions. There's 1 carbon, so the first part of the name is carbon. There are 4 hydrogens. The prefix for 4 is tetra, and because that's the second part of the name, the ending is "ide", the word is tetrahydride. CH4 is called carbon tetrahydride. Next, CO. The first element is carbon, and there's only one of those, so you just say carbon. The second element is oxygen. There's only one of those, the prefix is mono, and because it is the second element, the ending is "ide", so that becomes the word monoxide. That's the case where you drop a vowel so you don't get a double vowel. We don't say monoxide, just monoxide. So CO is carbon monoxide. Look at this third one. The letter C is by itself, so just carbon, not dicarbon, not tricarbon or anything, because there's only one C. The letter O, though, there's 2 of those, and the prefix for 2 is di, so you say dioxide. That's carbon dioxide. S2Br10. S is sulfur. The little 2 means it's disulfur. Br is bromide, and the 10 is deca, so that's decabromide. Disulfur, decabromide. Notice that there was never the prefix mono on the first part of the name, although the prefix mono can appear on the second word in the name. Notice that every time the first word in the name does not end in "ide, but every time the second part of the name does end in "ide. Here are some check for understanding questions. Write the name of each compound. I'll pause the video for you to work on these, and then we'll discuss the answers before we get back to the video. Here are the answers. Number 1, OF2. The first thing you do is decide if this is ionic or molecular, because you name things differently depending if they're ionic or molecular. Oxygen and fluorine are both nonmetals, so this is molecular. Molecular names involve the prefixes. One oxygen makes the word oxygen. Two of the fluorines makes the word difluoride. It's oxygen difluoride. Number two, the first thing you do is decide if it's ionic or molecular. Sulfur and oxygen are both nonmetals. It's molecular. Molecular names involve the prefixes. So the S is sulfur, and then since there's three oxygens, that's trioxide. Sulfur trioxide. Number three, nitrogen and oxygen are both nonmetals. It's molecular. We need to think about prefixes. Two nitrogens is dinitrogen, and the four oxygens is tetroxide. Instead of saying tetraoxide, which has a double vowel, just say tetroxide. Number four, write the name of the compound. Again, you've got to decide if it's ionic or molecular. Potassium is a metal. It makes an ion. Bromine's the nonmetal, and it makes an ion. This is ionic. So when you name it, there's not going to be prefixes. You're not going to use the word mono, di, tri, or any of that. This is potassium bromide. Question B, Fe is iron. That's a metal and makes ions. O is oxygen. That's a nonmetal. That's going to make an anion. This is ionic. When you name it, you need to think about charges. And because iron's a transition metal, you need to find its Roman numeral. Okay, the iron will have a +3 charge, and the oxide is a -2 charge. That's how this is balanced. 2 of those is +6, 3 of those is -6. So if iron is +3, you write iron 3 oxide. Question C, xenon is a nonmetal and fluorine's a nonmetal. This is molecular. That's when you think about prefixes. So xenon and then tetroxide. Tetra means 4. Continuing on. We were just writing the names when given formulas. Let's do the reverse process. Be able to write a formula when given the name of the compound. The technique is to translate any prefixes into subscripts. So like if the prefix is mono, the subscript is a 1. If the prefix is di, the subscript is a 2, and so on. And then write the symbols for each element name. For instance, if the name hydrogen is in there, you're going to need a capital H. Or if the name nitrogen is there, you're going to need a capital N. Let's look at some examples. In words, we have the name dihydrogen monoxide. Di means 2, mono means 1. Hydrogen is an H, oxide is an O. There are 2 hydrogens in 1 oxygen. It's H2O. Next example, trisulfur pentachloride. Tri means 3, penta means 5. Sulfur is going to be an S, chloride will be a Cl. Now put all that together. It's S3Cl5. Let's do some check for understanding questions. Write the formula of each compound. I'll give you some time to do these, and then we'll discuss the answers. Okay, question number 1. The prefix di is going to mean you have 2 of the fluorides. So the capital P for phosphorus, an F for fluoride, and then put a little 2 after it. PF2. Okay, number 2. Hexa means 6. Octa is 8. 6 sulfurs, 8 oxygens. So S6O8.